Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon, and welcome to Knowledge Talk, ladies and gentlemen. A weekly entertainment program aired live, specifically to share with you topics that contribute knowledge to the society. Yes, we've got news, sometimes we've got interviews with guests, tips, question and answer sessions, and yes, topics that will be shared with you throughout the program, of course, if time permits, during an hour. And yes, every week this will alternate. As I said, some week we're going to have some news, some we're going to have interviews, some we're going to have tips, question and answer session, but the objectively, ladies and gentlemen, is knowledge will be shared. Interviews with guests that are experts, professionals, and people who have made difference in the society. Knowledge speakers will be conducted on a regular basis. We'll be sharing with you knowledge topics, and every week, as I said, we do pick up a topic as long as it brings back to the society, and it's a knowledge that it shares back again to the society. That's what we will be doing. This program, ladies and gentlemen, is a weekly session that I will have with you every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. I'm your host, Tariq al-barwani, along with our studio engineer DJ Ayub, for an hour bringing you free knowledge at your doorsteps on Oman Radio FM 90.4. Okay, stay tuned for a quick music break before we start our topic of today.
For a better way to get up out of bed instead of getting on the internet and checking a new hit. Get up, first shot, come strut walking. A little bit of humble, a little bit of cautious, somewhere between like Rocky and Cosby's for the game. Nope, y'all can't copy up. Glad moonwalking, and this here is our party. My posse's been on Broadway, and we did it all way. Chrome music, I shed my skin and put my bones into everything I record to it. And yeah, I'm on. Let that stage light go and shine on down. Got that Bob suit game and Plinko in my style. Money, stay on my craft and stick around for those pounds. But I do that to pass the torch and put on for my town. Trust me, on my INDEPENDENT shit hustling. Chasing dreams since I was 14 with the 4-track bustin'. Halfway across that city with the back crushing. Labels out here, now they can't tell me nothing. We give that to the people. Across the country, labels out here, now they can't tell me nothing. We give it to the people, spread it across the country.
Here we go back, this is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like this feeling can't hold us. Like this feeling can't hold us. Here we go back, this is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like this feeling can't hold us. Like this feeling can't hold us.
Nah, can I kick it? Thank you, yeah, I'm so damn grateful. I grew up really wanna go fronts, but that's what you get when Wu-Tang raised you. Y'all can't stop me, go hard like I got an 808 in my heartbeat. And I'm eating at the beat like you give a little speed to a great white shark on shark. We raw, gonna go off, gone, deuces goodbye. I got a world to see, and my girl, she wanna see Rome. Caesar make you a believer, nah, I never ever did it for a throne. That validation comes from giving it back to the people. Now, sing this song and it goes like, raise those hands, this is our party. We came here to live life like nobody was watching. I got my city right behind me. If I fall, they got me. Learn from that failure, gain humility, and then we keep marching.
Here we go back, this is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like this feeling can't hold us. Like this feeling can't hold us. Go back, this is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like this feeling can't hold us.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Tariq al-Barwani, along with our studio engineer, DJ Ayub, with you today here live on Oman Radio FM 90.4. Our topic today is on living values, and specifically we will be taking an in-depth look into the world of values and how it impacts us personally and professionally while we learn about the field of living values education. I'm very, very happy to be inviting special guest who will be sharing with us today her thoughts on the subject and experience about the practice, so as making this living a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today is Helen Sayers. Helen comes from the island of Jersey in the UK and has lived in Oman for over 6 years. As manager and trainer at Oasis Life Skills Training Services, Helen facilitates workshops in professional and personal development for teachers, higher education students, and organizations. She also works as a freelance training consultant at PDO. Helen spent 8 years working with non-governmental organizations at the United Nations, Geneva, in the areas of human rights, universal values, education, sustainable development, and women's empowerment, and qualified as a technical editor with the World Health Organization. After teaching science, music and tennis at secondary high schools in the UK, Kenya and Switzerland, Helen developed an interest in values education and became a trainer with the Associations for Living Values Education International and a member of its International Advisory Board. She has facilitated workshops for teachers in Europe, Africa, India, and the Middle East with street children in West and Central Africa. Helen has written a training manual for teachers and facilitators, Ubuntu, the Spirit of Humanity, dedicated to the late Nelson Mandela. The manual has been translated into French, Arabic, and Spanish, with Italian and Konaki versions in progress. The book was officially launched in Oman in February 2013. A number of Ubuntu workshops have been conducted in the Sultanate, both in Arabic and English, with a focus on youth and youth organizations. Helen was recently invited to Goa to facilitate a workshop with members of the Legislative Assembly. The workshop was entitled Rediscovering Ancestral Values for the Modern World. In her spare time, she enjoys listening to music, meditation, and walking in the nature. Great profile with great accomplishments. And today, ladies and gentlemen, Helen is with us here on Oman Radio FM 90.4 on air to share with us all her blessings and specifically on living values. Helen, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Good evening, Tariq, and assalamu alaikum to you and to all the audience listening this evening. And I'd first of all like to congratulate you most sincerely on your most valuable professional award. I think this is just a wonderful achievement, and so I'd like to throw back the blessings into your court and honor you for that wonderful achievement.
Thank you very much, Helen, for your kind compliments. I appreciate that very, very well. Thank you, Helen. And thank you again for accepting to take some of your precious time to come on air and share with us your knowledge and experience on living values.
It's a pleasure.
Helen, we have 3 things or subjects we hope to cover today during the program, inshallah. Namely, the understanding values, educating values, and personal experience. On understanding values, if you don't mind to please kindly share what the definition of value is. When someone says value, what does value mean?
Yes. Thank you very much for asking that question. Of course, it's key to this evening's discussion. And it's actually not that easy to define, because values, it's not like a table or a chair. It's something that's intangible. And I would never personally go to a dictionary to look for a definition of values. And I think each one of us would have our own personal understanding. But if I were to try to find a definition, I would say it was something like the inner principles and ethics that guide our decisions and our character, possibly.
Okay.
I think it's absolutely at the foundation of our personality and who we are.
Is it linked by any chance to beliefs as well?
I think it can be. I think it can be shaped by our beliefs. I think we're born with them.
Okay.
Everyone has values in them, and as we pass through life's experiences, and even our beliefs change from time to time, and definitely that shapes our values.
So it means the values can be changed. Is that right? Because if you're saying or the way I'm looking at it is, you're saying one is born with it. Does it mean that he or she can change their values, or any of the things that is happening or surrounding them? For instance, the activities, the environment, etc. Can the values be changed?
Yes, I think definitely they can be adapted and molded and developed. And this, of course, is the whole meaning of values education, helping young children to grow up in an atmosphere and with an education that helps them to actually grow in their values. So, for example, the value of honesty, it's deeply there in the soul. But if we're not careful with the influences of today's society, we can be very tempted to lose that value. But in fact, it's always there, and just needs to be encouraged to come back again if we do lose it. And I think that's the same with many values. And I think in society, we can see that in some cases values are being sort of slowly eroded in some cases. And so we need to shine them up again, just bring them back again into the limelight. But I think they are already there, definitely, deeply there in the soul of every human being.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. Now, why does it matter for one or us to be aware of our values? And is it a necessity, or is it just an optional thing that one should do or have?
I feel that values give quality of life. I don't mean standard of living. I mean quality. One doesn't have to have a beautiful car and a fantastic house to have a quality life.
True.
And in my travels in different parts of the world, I've often found that some people with the deepest quality of life can be very poor people, but somehow they have happiness, they have respect, and they're very, very happy in their life. And I think the foundation of that is their values. So I think that's why they're so important. They give us quality of life, and when we lose our values for any reason, we lose that quality, we lose our happiness for a start. And so I don't think that they're sort of an optional extra. I think that, we are blessed with them, if you like. And the more we use them, the more we live them, the more we enjoy them. That's the most important point. The more our quality and enjoyment of life grows with it.
We have, as I understand, that values, I might be wrong again, change in time. So when one is born, probably born with some certain values that he or she gets from maybe the surrounding, the family, etc. And this might change over time. Do you agree on that, or is it right?
Well, actually, to be honest, if I look at myself, I started off as a very young girl with wonderful dreams of what sort of a person I was going to become and how wonderful I was going to be. I think I imagined I was going to become a princess or something. And then a little bit later in life, I sort of took a long, hard look at myself and I thought, oh dear, I haven't quite lived up to what I had expected of myself. What's happened? How have I allowed certain values to slip? And so I can say in my own personal life, I have seen that decline, and I can see that potential decline happening at any time. But I think also, I remember my dear grandmother, who always used to say, her favorite line was, things are not as they used to be. And she used to talk about the time when she never used to have to lock her door, when everyone spoke nicely to each other, and it was a different sort of quality of life. And I remember, towards the end of her life, she felt very sad because she had seen even in her own family, those strong traditional values that she had been brought up with, had been lost to a certain extent, not totally, but to a certain extent. So I can see, and I think, many of us have noticed in some areas of life, values are at risk of being lost or diminished.
Okay, but one thing I would like just to share, Helen, is that I think you're bigger than Princess. I mean, looking at your profile, mashallah, you've got a great profile and a great accomplishment, mashallah. I like that you've set a goal for yourself. For instance, you said you would like to, to become a princess probably, but I see with your profile and the kind of great activities that you do here in Oman and around the world is, mashallah, really, really great. So I mean, hats off for that. So,
well, that's very kind of you, but of course, on writing and actually in life, it can be two different things. So I can't claim, to always live my values, but I definitely have set that as a goal for myself.
Okay.
Because I do think it's so valuable, literally.
Yeah, no, mashallah, mashallah. Now, can this be a positive or negative? What I mean by that is the values being changing in time.
Yes. Now, that's an interesting question, because I think there are very positive changes happening in the world as well. And a lot of that is to do with, the internet. I mean, a wonderful interview last week, by the way. Congratulations. I was absolutely riveted to every word of your discussion last week, all about the internet and mobile phones, etc. And we can see there's a downside to that in society, but the upside is how much more connected we all are and how creative people have become, how open people have become, how much more adventurous people have become in exploring other cultures and different countries, different ideas, which, 30 years ago we didn't really have that opportunity. So in some cases, people might have been a little bit over-conservative and a little bit closed in their outlook on life, but I think, the values of courage and adventurousness and openness and exploration of life, I think these are on the increase, and especially in the youth. I feel very impressed when I see the young people, especially in Oman. They're doing wonderful things, and I even met a young lady yesterday, and she said that a group of them get together once a week to spend half a day just talking about values.
MashaAllah.
And I thought, well, that's just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And she said, we're talking about all sorts of values, we're exploring different cultures, different ideas, and in a very positive way.
MashaAllah, this is fantastic things to hear, Helen. And truth be told, again, it's because of having wonderful people like yourself, Helen, in Oman. We really do appreciate that. Helen, is there such thing as a universal values?
Well, I think going back to what I suggested earlier on, that I do definitely think that we're all born with a huge set of values. In my travels and I've lived in Swaziland and Switzerland and Kenya and now in Oman, each country exhibits, a special set of values which, sort of shine more than others perhaps. I mean, for example, in Switzerland, it was very much accuracy and precision and punctuality to the second. And these were, very high values that I noticed in Switzerland. Okay. Whereas in many of the African countries I've lived in, it would be more like, sharing and solidarity. In England, I wasn't quite sure. I was trying to think, what are the values of the UK? But I came up with sense of humour. I mean, you might agree with that or not, but many people say the British have a unique sense of humour. And I think a thirst for education. Mm-hmm. And then Oman, of course, hospitality, respect, tolerance, kindness, friendliness. I mean, there's so many values that one immediately is struck by when one comes to Oman. But although those are highlighted in those different places that I've visited, but I think we've all got all of them, but just in different degrees and to different amounts.
Yeah, mashallah. We commonly speak about values in terms of people and communities. What about values in relations to organization? And is this something that they should focus more on this area? I know organizations do have that, but whether they're following or not, that's a different question. But what's your feedback about that?
Yes, I see what you're saying here. And most organizations, if you read, their profile, you'll find, a wonderful vision and a mission statement, and usually they have a list of the values that organization stands by. And of course, they're always very elevated and, very high values. And it's wonderful that they do actually sit down and think to put that as a description of the company or the organization. Actually living to those values and living up to those values, of course, is the challenge that we all face. And it's just not easy in any organization because you have many people from all sorts of different backgrounds and beliefs and understandings and work ethics, etc., coming together. So I think this is actually probably one of the greatest challenges of most organizations, is to view their values and to try to live up to them. And it's certainly not an easy task.
And how can they do that? I mean, how could organization do that? We know that this is definitely a challenge, as you said, and looking at organizations that are, global companies where you have different employees within the company, as you said, with different values. How can companies then overcome the challenge?
Yes, good question. I feel that because values come from within us, the best way is to really sit with the people in the organization and discuss values, in a very open way, and, get them to actually have workshops together on, what are our values and what values would you like to add to our company. I think this is a very important part of people feeling a sense of belonging to a company, is where they feel that, what they believe in most and their values are not only respected, but actually valued by the company. So I think it's a very good investment in time to spend time with staff and arrange activities, days out or workshops, whatever, with values in mind. Sometimes people feel a little bit afraid to think about talking about values, etc. So one can always disguise the word in different ways where people don't feel this is going to be something a little bit airy-fairy or even religious in some cases. But nevertheless, people thrive on, this sort of discussion and this sort of, talking to each other, I think, is the most important way of doing this process.
Okay. Now, that's very, I think I actually believe in that, where you need to get group of people together, sitting together and seeing how can we all work together and understand each other. But isn't that a bit of challenging sometime when you've got people who all have different values, okay?
Yes.
You might get people, some who are, dominant. I don't know. That's my feeling again. That's why I would like to learn from you. How could or can organizations, for instance, create a value and then ensure that value is utilized within or used by every people within the company? I do agree getting all the people together, but I still feel that's a challenge.
Yes. I know certainly a lot of schools that I've worked with, they choose a value for the month. And I know there's one of the higher education colleges is doing this at the moment among their staff, choosing a value for the month and then, tossing out ideas, sharing ideas on Facebook, putting up slogans on notice boards and things like this, so that for 1 month, everyone is focusing on, let's say, patience.
Okay.
And I think an important thing is to make it humorous as well. No one wants to feel heavy about conversations on values or even thinking about values. It should be light-hearted. It should be something that makes one feel good and empowered and happy. So again, it's up to the creativity of the people in the staff of any organization, and it's up to the selective eye of the management to see who are those key people who could do this among our staff, who are the creative ones, who are the ones who've got the sense of humor, who are the ones that can create a group and do something different in the company that ultimately can only be of benefit, because if it brings unity to the company, then of course everything's going to do well, including profits and including unity among the staff. The main thing, I think.
Okay, no, I think that's good. I like that. But the other question now comes in is, if you have a value, so a company sets a value, okay, whatever the value is, X, Y, Z, and then you're saying they put it on, let's say, on a trial every month.
Yes.
Would that mean they would be changing the values every month?
Yes. What I've done with a few different groups that I've worked with is create a calendar at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
I just did this with a group of friends recently.
Okay.
And we just picked out randomly from a set of cards with values on them. Each person picked a card with a value, and that value was for January, the next one was for February, etc. So we picked, for example, sense of humor for January, and now in February it's tolerance,
Okay.
and in March it's going to be patience, and so on. And because I think after a month you've probably felt that you've done enough of that, and you want to move on and change the scenery a little bit. So I think this is also, it's important to feel the dynamic so that people don't get bored.
Okay.
It's got to be interesting. It's got to be fun.
Oh, that's really nice. That's really nice. And how do you then evaluate to see that people are following it?
Yes, well, of course, that it's not a sort of quantitative evaluation. It's usually, through anecdotes, getting people to sort of share their experiences, or even it could be by observation. One could notice.
Yeah.
Certainly, starting with myself. Have I become a little bit more tolerant this month, for example? I've been working on it now for 2 weeks, so I can, do a sort of spot check on myself, but also among the people that I'm working with. And of course, this works very well in classrooms with children. If you've got a teacher who's passionate about values, she will be able to, or he will be able to observe these children and how their interactions change and how they get on well with each other, etc. And so she will be able to acknowledge those developments in those children and praise them and, give little prizes for values rather than just prizes for academic development. And I've seen this work very well, and it boosts the children's confidence. Maybe a child is not very good at mathematics and the academic side of their education, but the child might be very kind and compassionate. Why not give that child a gold star for kindness at the end of the week, and so on. So, again, it's about creativity, and teachers are creative, and I think need to be empowered to be even more creative in their teaching, because it makes it fun and dynamic, and the children are building their character at the same time. And they're not cutting down on their maths or their geography or anything else, but they're integrating values into every aspect of their school life.
Okay. How do you find the situation in Oman when it comes to teachers and the students, and even throughout your trainings and practice that you've been doing so far? How have you find the acceptance of the sessions and the practices where they understand values, the importance of values, using values, and also even that you've just mentioned about the empowerment? Do you see the teachers in Oman have the necessary empowerment to be creative?
Thank you. That's a long question. I'll try to answer it. First of all, it's very, very evident, that Oman has deep, deep cultures, deep, deep values in its culture. And it's wonderful the way that Oman has balanced this incredible development and kept its heritage and its cultural values very, very much at heart. So talking to teachers, it's almost you're not trying to sort of tell them anything new, because the values are deeply embedded in this culture and in this society. But I think what you're suggesting as well is the empowerment to perhaps be more creative with them.
Sure.
I have found this to be a bit challenging in some places, not just in Oman, but in India in particular. I've done quite a few values education courses there, and the teaching methods were very much chalk and talk and copy-paste and memorize.
Okay.
I think it was actually a throwback from the days when the British started education in India, possibly. But once the teachers were empowered to be a little bit more free in their style of teaching, and once they felt confident that they weren't reducing the academic quality of their teaching, then they actually found that it not only made teaching more enjoyable for them, but actually the academic standard increased a little bit more. And the teachers that I have spoken to and worked with in Oman have been very receptive and immediately put it into practice. I've been absolutely astounded with how quickly, it doesn't take a lot of training at all. There's one particular young woman who attended a few values education classes, and she just immediately went off and started doing her own workshops in the community with the women in her village, with other students at the university. And she just went off and did it. And I thought, my goodness, what incredible initiative. And it was all just coming straight from her heart. It didn't have to be taught. And this is actually an expression that I've often found myself using. Values don't have to be taught. They can be caught. If you have a good role model of a teacher in front of those students will automatically follow his or her example of respect, politeness, good work ethics, etc., etc. So I've given you a long answer to your long question.
No, mashallah, and it is fantastic. You explained it very, very well, Helen. Helen, we're going to take a quick break for the press, and we're going to revert back on our program today, and specifically we're going to look into the values, education, and the purpose of the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're listening to Radio Sultanate of Oman on your favorite radio station, 90.4 FM.
Tariq Talks is your weekly live educational radio program on 90.4 FM, focusing on business, technology, career, personal development, and more, with your host, Tariq al-barwani. Tariq has received both local and international recognition on a number of successful IT, business, and community projects as he shares his knowledge live in the air with interviews, news, tips, and quizzes on varieties of topics. Let's learn together with Tariq Talk.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Tariq al-Barwani, along with our studio engineer, DJ Ayub, with you today here live on Oman Radio FM 90.4. Our topic today is on living values, and specifically we're looking at the world of values and how it impacts us personally and professionally. And while we learn about the field of living values education, our guest today is Helen Sears, and we've learned quite a great deal about values before the music break, and now we're back again to talk about the values, and specifically values education and the purpose of the same. Helen?
Hello, yes, I'm back again.
So, values education, and what is its purpose? If you could kindly share with us the definition.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you very well. So
it's the hello, give me a second. Just could you hear me right now?
Yes, I can. A little bit faint.
Okay. All right. Our studio is getting it right now. Okay, we are there. Can you hear me now?
That's fine.
Excellent. So, what is the values education and what is its purpose?
Values education, as I understand it, is it's not about having a different subject called values education. It's about something that's integrated into every area of the curriculum.
Fantastic.
And I've been involved in an organization called Living Values Education internationally now for about 16 years. And if I could perhaps just relate to how I became involved in the beginning, okay. I think it would answer your question.
Please do. Please do.
And I remember a moment actually very clearly. I was teaching at a school in the UK, and it was in December 1999, and everyone was a little bit wary and afraid about what's going to happen in the year 2000. Is all the electricity going to stop? And all there were a lot of fears about, electricity cuts and all sorts of things. And so, in a science lesson, I did an experiment with some young students, and we were looking at how to heat up water and keep it at a high temperature for as long as possible. So it was a very scientific experiment, but to make it a bit more interesting, I told them you can bring in some soup tomorrow and bring in all sorts of insulation material, so we're going to see how long we can keep your soup as warm as possible. So we had in the science lab all sorts of smells you can imagine: vegetable soup, tomato soup, all sorts of things, and thermometers and beakers and Bunsen burners. And once they had their soup boiling, they wrapped their beaker of soup up in felt or wool or cardboard or plastic, whatever they thought would keep it warm as long as possible.
Okay.
And they asked me, why are we doing this, teacher? And I said, well, just imagine that, you know, in the next month, suddenly there's no electricity and it's very, very cold because it's January, and you're going to have to find a way of not only heating some food up, but keeping it warm enough so that you can, not only you can eat it or drink it, but you can also share it with others around you, perhaps even your neighbors. And then one child said to me, but my neighbors, they should cook their own soup. You know, I shouldn't have to give them soup. They should be able to look after themselves.
Okay.
And this broke into a discussion as to, you know, what is our responsibility? Is it just to look after ourselves, or do we have a responsibility towards our neighbors? And I was quite interested, you know, that there was definitely some on one side and some on the other side in the class. And it suddenly struck me, I thought, you know, I might have produced A-grade students out of this group.
Okay.
But if half of them wouldn't even give a bowl of soup to their neighbor in need, then I don't think that I have actually, you know, been successful as a teacher.
Okay.
And that started me thinking, you know, what really is education? In the past, it used to be more about character education than academic education, and I realized that certainly in the sort of schooling that I'd been teaching within, in the system, it was going more and more and more towards a very, very heavy academic curriculum, and less towards the sort of vocational skills, and values were somehow being left out of the equation. And this sort of coincided with a time when I got to know some other teachers who were sort of thinking in the same way.
Okay.
And I heard about this international organization, Living Values Education, which was an association of educators all over the world who were sort of thinking along the same lines. And it changed my way of teaching and my whole approach in a much more successful way. I felt much more fulfilled. My students were more respectful towards each other. And again, as I suggested earlier on in the program, their results certainly didn't suffer as a result of this sort of change of approach. Their results got better.
Okay, that's really, really nice. I want to know one thing. Is there any work being done in values education in Oman, or a plan to have that done in Oman?
Well, I know certainly in Oman there's a lot of work being done.
Okay.
I remember in December reading about a four-day Oman competitiveness forum where one of the themes was education, you know, how to give stress to values. And it was stated, you know, we have our own culture, values and traditions. We need an Omani model that fits in with the modern world as well. And I really sort of, you know, highly commend the sort of thinking and the energy that was going into that forum. And even way back in June 2011, there was actually a forum on Omani values and the role of the citizen in development. And I think one of the conclusions of that forum was that values contribute to social development in a major way. So there's a lot going on, and I know there's, you know, several organizations have been, you know, asked to go into schools and help to teach values and help to promote values. So it's certainly happening in a very big way, and I know the ministries are very dedicated and are doing wonderful work. In my own little way, in the company that I run, you know, I've just been doing a few little courses and workshops here and there with teachers, university students in Nizwa once, and a school in Sohar, and I once did a workshop with the Montessori school in Muscat.
Okay.
And it's been very rewarding, and yes, I've been very encouraged to see how much work is already going on here. And in Sohar, at the Indian school there, one teacher actually has, you know, a values club, and once a week, any student that's interested, they don't have to, but they stay behind after school, and for a couple of hours, they do all sorts of values activities, and very creative, artistic, role modeling, all sorts of ways of expressing and experiencing values. And then once a year, she arranges with the local community a whole day retreat at a farm in Barca, where the children and the parents all come and explore values. And I usually go along and help with a few creative activities. But it's very inspiring to see this sort of work being done. And it's sowing the seeds in those young people for the rest of their lives. You know, I think it's extremely valuable work.
MashaAllah, that's really interesting to hear and learn, Helen. You know, Helen, I've actually myself read a lot about the work that you do. As I said before the beginning of the program, that I look forward to meet you in person. And we do have a community known as Knowledge Oman, and I feel that we will learn a lot from you, Helen, inshallah, where also you could help us, you know, create a solid value for ourselves as well, inshallah. So we'll definitely invite you for that. A very close friend of mine and a colleague, Reem Audia, told me that today, February the 18th, has a special significance for you. Why is that? Hello?
Hello, yes. February the 18th is always a special day for me. It's the day when my dearest, youngest brother passed away 10 years ago.
Okay.
And he had played a very, very special role in my life. He had a very unfortunate, upbringing in some ways. He had schizophrenia, and he was very badly bullied at school, and he had a lot of problems to deal with. And those came with him into his adulthood. He spent a lot of time in psychiatric wards and in hospitals, etc. But you could not find a kinder, more generous, lovely person. He was like a sort of angel to me. And when he passed away, I'll never forget the funeral. I've never seen, it was in a church in England, and it was absolutely packed. It was overflowing. People were outside the church. And I looked around and I thought, goodness, where have all these people come from? And it was all the nurses and the doctors and his friends and relatives and the people whose lives he had touched. And it made me realize, very deeply that, it doesn't have to be a famous person that influences people. It doesn't even have to be a person who is so-called normally abled. Here's someone who had such psychological problems, but somehow his values just shone through. He was just an open book of generosity, kindness, and, just such a wonderful uncle to his nephews and nieces, and just a great brother to me. I learned a lot from him. So every time 18th of January comes my way, I light a little candle for Stephen, my brother, and think about, his values and how he touched my heart so deeply, and how he, in fact, changed my life and the lives of many others through his example, without even knowing it really. He was just naturally an embodiment of values.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. There are very few people in this world who are, beautiful and also, kind and noble in the kind of things that you're doing, Helen. And I'm very, very proud to have had you today here with us on air. We only have an hour in a program, but I know within this hour, many of our listeners have learned a lot from you. And I personally look forward to even invite you again in our future upcoming programs to further talk about living values and how can this how can this really impact the society. I know in an hour we cannot cover much of the information. Before we end the program, is there any final tips or input you would like to share?
Yes, I think just simply, to thank you very much again for inviting me, and to say that I'm very much looking forward to meeting you too. And I think, the tip would be just everyone can find that special thing about themselves. The first time I found something that I thought really special about myself was when I leapt out of an aeroplane with a parachute on my back. And as I came down, I knew that I can do things in life. I felt that courage, but I also felt that feeling of absolute peace while I was coming down. Before I saw the ground coming up towards me, there was a feeling of absolute peace and tranquility, and I just felt the soul was calling me to understand itself more deeply. So that combination of the sort of confidence and courage that I found in that moment, and just the realization that we have far more in ourselves than we will ever realize, but to just go for it and challenge everyone, we need to challenge ourselves and stretch the boundaries and go beyond the limitations and find, what's really great in each one of us, and then live it. That's the key word, I think. Values are not just things in books, and they're not things just to talk about. These are things to live. To live with it. And to enjoy.
I respect that fully, Helen. One quick question: where was it? Which country, and when was it where you flew with the parachute?
It was in England.
Okay.
I never had any intention to go parachuting, but I met an old school friend from way back when. Just by chance, I was living in Bristol, and just in the conversation, it turned out that he'd become a parachute instructor. And I said to him, without thinking, I said, that's something I've always loved to do.
Me too,
actually. I was telling a blatant lie.
MashaAllah, me too, I would like to do that too.
At all. And I thought I would impress him by saying that. Then he said, come on the next class, it starts tomorrow.
MashaAllah.
So then I had to go ahead, but I'm glad I did. And in a way, I'm glad that I said that, something that wasn't quite true, but it actually made me have to follow it through, and I've never regretted that moment.
And inshallah, I will do that as well. You've already influenced me, so I will sooner or later see me doing it, inshallah. Thanks
the skies will watch you coming down.
Thanks you. Helen, thank you very, very much for joining us today here on Oman FM 90.4 to share your valuable knowledge on living values and the impact that has on our lives. I would like to take this opportunity to wish you the very best and success in all you do, Helen.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And ma'asalama.
Ma'asalama. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our program for this week. I hope you all had an intriguing time with us. If you have an interesting topic, feedback, or comment that you wish to share with me about the program, please write to me an email available from my website at www.tariq.net. That's TARIQ.net. I'll be pleased to hear and learn from you. Let us catch up again next week on Tuesday, same time, from 5:30 p.m. on a knowledge session. I am Tariq al-barwani along with our studio engineer DJ Ayub, wishing you all a